Hello, everyone, and welcome back. And it's really great to have you with us for the final session of our webinar series based on the IT Training 2030 case study. We will continue our webinars, but this is our last session for the topic of the IT Training 2030. In the first session, we looked at the reality behind IT training today. We challenged a simple assumption. More training should mean better skills, but in many organizations, that is not the case. And we saw that the main issue is not lack of training. It's more like structural problems like missing time, weak integration into daily work, and no clear ownership of skills. And in the second session, we went one step further and we explored why many solutions still fail, even when companies invest in platforms, content, and new formats. The key insight was clear. More tools and more content often increase complexity, but not impact. Without focus, direction, and a clear system, training stays an activity, not a result. Today, in this final session, we move from understanding the problem to building a solution. And we will focus on one central question. It is how can companies build real IT skills without overloading their teams? This is where Clara will guide us. She will walk us through what actually works in practice, how to move from fragmented learning offers to a capability system, and how to create impact step by step. And you will see how to define the right skill priorities, how to connect learning with real work, and how to build a system that creates measurable business impact instead of just more training activity. And Clara, this is you're on the stage right now, and you can start when you're ready.
Thank you, Aslihan. A warm welcome to everyone. I'm excited to start with the final part of our webinar series. So let's dive straight in. I would like to start today to remember you and to tell you once more what motivated us to even conduct the case study. And this was IT companies that invested heavily in IT trainings, meaning they had the best platforms, they had a bunch of certifications and a great program itself. And even though they had the perfect setup, at the end of the year, they were frustrated because 80% of the employees were trained. However, they saw that they had the same skill gap, like at the beginning of the year, same project delays, and an even more overwhelmed team. And that's, of course, not what we would like to see when investing in IT trainings. What this example showed is that training volume does not automatically lead to capability to use the skills that you newly acquired. And that brings me to one simple opening question. Take a moment here to reflect which statement sounds more like your organization today. Is it we offer many trainings, or is it we are systematically building future critical capabilities? You can use the chat or a piece of paper, but try to find yourself in one of the statements. If you chose the first statement as the better fit, I promise you're not alone here. That's exactly where most organizations are today. But here lies the issue. Offering a lot of trainings can be considered as activity, and building capability instead is more of a strategy thing. And this wrong position is mainly where the most wasted effort sits. So even though Aslan already mentioned briefly what we've done in the first two webinars, I want to give a brief recap here as well. We had the first part, which was more about the structural issues we encounter. We saw that IT training is structurally broken, that more learning does not automatically lead to more capability, and we based that insights on empirical evidence from Gartner studies and OECD, as well as a lot of consulting companies that dived into the topic, like McKinsey and Deloitte. We saw clearly that companies usually fail with the IT training when they start too many initiatives parallel, when they act short-term without a long-term architecture, so only focusing on the short-term effects. And the third finding we had here was that they usually struggle in assigning ownership clearly. The second part was more about the myth underlying IT training, so beliefs that are widely spread. However, we kind of try to unfold what's the truth behind it. And we found that more platforms, more content, and more formats are usually not the solutions. They increase complexity, having the counteractive effect in the end, instead of reducing it. And that's something you should really be aware of, as even though you want to do efforts in the right direction, you kind of go into the wrong one. And that's pretty much what brings us to today's topic. The question, what's actually building skill development, and what's really helping in organizations. But before we start with the content, I would also invite you here once more to reflect on your own organization here. What's the biggest blocker you experience here? Is it too many fragmented trainings? Is it no clear skill priority, lack of time in day-to-day business, or the no measurable business impact? You can use the chat or answer it on your own. So what's interesting here is if you take a closer look at them, you see that they are kind of pointing to the same issue in the end. They are all symptoms of the same thing, which is a clear structure. And if you look across the studies, you will see that they all point in kind of the same direction. What we found is that success does not depend on speed. It instead depends on sequence and focus. And that's something we should really be aware of. We found that capabilities don't grow by adding new courses. Instead, it's really about the perfect guidance and the right direction. You can see on the left side what most organizations have built today and what the programs look like right now. It's usually fragmented programs, a very cost-driven learning structure, which is activity-focused, especially in the trainings. And to be fair, this didn't happen by accident. It's more the result of our today's situation. We live in a very fast-paced working environment. We have new topics, new tools like AI, but also a lot of other new things that make our everyday work kind of challenging and new. And what happened here over the time was that we put a lot more effort into it, more activity. We thought we need to do a bunch of trainings in order to be in time and competitive. On the right side is what we are aiming for. So if you compare the two different models, the one on the left and the one on the right side, you can see that there's a completely different logic behind it. And the question for decision makers should no longer be which trainings do we offer. It's more what capabilities do we need in order to succeed and how do we build them. So it's a lot more of a systematic question than it used to be in the past. And that's exactly the shift I want to point out today. Based on the empirical evidence, we have created a 3-phase game plan, which is divided into the short-term phase, building foundations, the second phase, scale and expand, and the third phase, achieve business impact. I will guide you through all of the 3 to make it more clear to you. And if you want to go a bit more into detail after I've presented it, you're more than welcome to also have a look at our case study. So let's start with the short-term phase, the first phase, which is about building focus and remove complexity. By that, I mean pretty much if you would start today or this year, this is exactly what should happen within the next 2 years. And this is actually also the phase where most organizations already lose control. You have 3 very important points here, and it's all about decision-making, actually. So the first thing, which is very important, is that you define critical skill clusters that you would like to have in your organization. I've given 4 examples which are very popular at the moment, but it could also be something completely different for your organization, of course. So we move away from wanting to have 200 skills in our organization to reduce it to 5 to 10 maybe for the beginning. And it's important to have that focus, because otherwise we would kind of get lost in trainings that are kind of teaching the same thing, but having a more fancy name or whatever. It's very easy to get lost in that. And instead of being a fool to that, make sure that you have clearly defined trainings that exactly tell you what in the end will be the defined learning goals. Then we have the second point, which is reduce learning landscape. By that, I mean cut what's not necessary, cut where you see that the effort or the impact in the end is very low. Make sure that you really clean up that learning landscape. And even though you have that fancy learning platform, if the courses are just useless and just a placeholder, make sure that you delete them from there. They don't make the training effect any better. The third aspect, and the third aspect is pretty much based on what the result of the first webinar was, is that you should introduce work-integrated learning. By that, we mean that you should move learning into real work instead of just having that fixed learning setups, learning rooms. Make sure that the employees get the chance to use the newly applied skills in real work settings so that they can learn that they use them in extreme situations that might be more complex than what we have in our training setup. Then we have our midterm phase. Maybe one very important note here is that if you have less choices on your learning platforms, the impact will increase, and this is something you always need to keep in mind. Okay, let's move to our second phase, turn learning into a system. The second phase, meaning 3 to 5 years from now, after you've successfully completed the first phase, it's all about where the real shift happens, meaning we have continuous capability system here, and try to have that skill-based workforce planning, internal mobility, and measure impact, that what you have now implemented in your organization, that you also check in that it shows the effect that you initially wanted. So we move from participation to really checking into the business impact. The main takeaway from this phase is capability grows in real work and not in classrooms, and this is something we always need to check in. Then we have our third phase, make skills a strategic infrastructure. This is something we want to accomplish in the long run, meaning if we would start today, something you should have by 2030. we want to see a continuous capability system, not one-time training. The training does not stop after the certification is in the in-mail box. No, this is actually where the real training starts. And we need to have built a system where we have enough time that the new skills can be applied in extremer situations. The third very, very important aspect here is that you need to define a clear ownership of the skills, meaning if people participated in trainings, that they in the end know that they are in charge of this new thing now, and that you have an infrastructure here so that people kind of know who they can talk to in the specific situations for a better performance of the overall company. The conclusion here is that skills need to become a business critical asset, and that's also what the goal of the third phase is. Let's make this a little bit more concrete. I've phrased the three phases here once more a bit different for you to easier grasp what the main takeaway was all about. So the first step is, instead of adding new courses, try to reduce them. I would say on average, this means 20% of the trainings you have right now are kind of useless or simply too much to have the long-term effect. And that's why try to cut them and define clear skill clusters in order to have the success rate that you would like to see. Then as midterm goal, the next phase would be that you make sure that you link learning to actual work. So instead of just simply taking part in the trainings, create a landscape, a system in your company that move people into real projects. The newly learned skills should be applied as soon as possible. And by that, you will see that the ownership will be a lot more visible and clear for the participants. And that has an overall positive effect also when it comes to communication in the company. Then third, this is something that happens a lot more over time. You don't need to focus on it right away, but always keep that in the back of your head. That you really make sure that you build the systems, that you constantly measure the real business impact. If you see that certain trainings don't have a positive effect on the company's performance, feel free to just delete it, replace it. We need that constant check-in here. And by that, you establish clear governance and make capability something you can actively steer. Based on the three stages we have discussed, I would like to invite you here to reflect on your own situation once more. If you look at your company, if you think about your own learning landscape, try to place yourself in which of the three phases you're currently in. Again, if you would like to start a discussion, you can use the chat or make a note for yourself. Okay, I've brought another example for you guys to kind of test if you understood or if you're on the right track for that. Think about a company that has 20 different IT trainings, but no shared view on which future skills matter the most. We have a company where the budgets are tight, managers complain about overload of work, and the HR team can not show any impact. Now step into the shoes of a decision maker and try to think of what would you do first. Launch more courses, define critical skill clusters, buy a new learning platform, or make training mandatory. the correct answer here is define critical skill clusters would be the first step based on the game plan we have created. Okay, before I finish off with the webinar, I've brought one last learning nugget. If you've participated in the first 2 webinars, you've already seen that we always finish off our webinars with a little story, some kind of story where we shift perspective and shed a different light on the situations for you to understand the matter a bit better. So the story I've brought today is that I would like to think about a person who wants to get really fit, who wants to build muscles, and watches a bunch of videos, reads books about nutrition. The Instagram feed is all about how to optimize the body. Person also already attends several classes, but yeah, after a while gets lost in the daily routine again. And the person checks in for the results after a couple of months and wants to see how well the muscles developed. And now you can probably already expect what happens. A person that reads about it, learns a lot about nutrition, but never ends up going to the gym. Of course, in the end, nothing happens because you don't build muscles by learning about training. You build muscles by actively attending the gym. And that's actually pretty much what happens with other skills as well. That capability is not built through content, not about theory. It's something you really need to experience in practice, where you need to build on, you need to be constant with it in order to have that result. And I hope that this little metaphor gave you another perspective, a better idea on what this is all about, as it's kind of the same pattern. To conclude what we have discussed today, if you take one little bit from this webinar, it should be this sentence: focus builds capability, not volume. Training is what fills our calendars, but focus builds in the end the capability. And make sure, if you look at your own training strategy, that you differentiate these 3 phases, and that you always make sure that before entering a new stage, all the needs of the prior phase are met. And that were my final words. Thank you all for attending the session. Aslihan will take over again.
Thank you, Clara, and thank you all for joining us today and for being a part of this full webinar series. And we really appreciate your time and your openness to question how IT training works today and how it needs to change going forward. So if you want to revisit the full journey, you can find the first and second sessions on our LinkedIn page, and they give you the full content behind what we discussed today. We will also share the complete case study, the report, in both in English and German, and you will find the links in the comment section. If there is one thing to take with you, it is this: real skill development does not come from more training. It comes from focus, integration, and consistent action. And thanks again for being with us, and we look forward to continuing the conversation, and hope to see you in the next webinar. Thank you so much.